Ethan sat at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock, the only sounds in the otherwise silent house. He hadn't noticed the quiet before, but tonight it felt suffocating. His phone buzzed on the table, a message from Lana lighting up the screen. "I'll be home late. Big meeting with the CEO." For a moment, he just stared at the words. The simplicity of the message, the tone so routine, almost as if nothing was amiss. But Ethan's mind wasn't on the text. It was elsewhere, drifting back to a memory that had been nagging at him for weeks. The dinner at Vincent's, the upscale restaurant that they frequented for business. Lana had been radiant that evening, dressed in a silk black dress that hugged her frame, her laughter echoing around the table. But it wasn't her laughter that had caught Ethan's attention. It was the way she looked at Daniel, the CEO of her company, with something more than professional admiration. A look that lingered just a second too long. Her smile was soft, almost intimate. Ethan had dismissed it at the time, attributing it to the usual charm that Daniel had a knack for, the kind of charm that could make anyone feel special, important. But tonight, as Ethan sat there alone, waiting, the memory of that smile clawed at him, refusing to let go. He didn't want to doubt Lana, not after everything they had built. But the doubt had planted itself in his mind like a seed, slowly taking root. And now, tonight, something felt different. The buzz of his phone pulled him back to the present. Lana's message was still there, sitting innocuously on the screen, but something about it felt off. A simple phrase, something so mundane, yet it made his skin prickle. The CEO. The words circled in his mind. Big meeting with the CEO. Again, it sounded so ordinary, but Ethan knew better than to trust the surface. It wasn't the first time Lana had used that excuse. With a sigh, Ethan pushed himself away from the table, his hands suddenly clammy. He walked over to the kitchen counter, absent-mindedly shifting through the clutter of unopened bills and old newspapers. As his fingers brushed over the edge of Lana's purse, the leather soft and familiar, something slipped out. He froze. A receipt. At first, it seemed insignificant, just a slip of paper. But then, he saw the number, the amount, a small fortune for a gift. Ethan's heart raced as he read the words scrawled beneath the number, "For a special night." His stomach twisted. His mind raced. What the hell is this? The note was simple, but the implications were anything but. He folded it carefully, his hands shaking, and stared down at the words. The expensive bottle of champagne, the dress, the note. Everything pointed to something he hadn't been ready to face. He felt a cold chill spread through him, an icy suspicion creeping into his chest. Ethan had always trusted Lana. Their marriage was built on years of shared dreams, laughter, and the quiet security of routine. They had fought together, built a family, and weathered storms. But now, as the receipt burned a hole in his palm, something inside him snapped. His eyes moved from the receipt to his phone. The message from Lana was still there, almost mocking him with its simplicity. He swallowed hard, the lump in his throat tightening. The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in. The voice in his head was louder than ever. Follow the trail. Trust your instincts. You can't ignore this. Without another thought, he grabbed his keys and headed for the door. The car was cold as he slid into the driver's seat, his mind already racing ahead to where it would take him. The piece of paper with the receipt clutched in his hand, the name of the place where she had bought the gift. The night felt like it was closing in on him, and there was no turning back. Lana had always been careful, too careful for her own good. but Ethan knew better than to take things at face value. Tonight, he would uncover the truth. Whatever it took. The camera lingers on his face as the car pulls away, the headlights cutting through the darkness. His jaw is set, his eyes steely. The hunt had begun. Ethan's house was everything he had ever dreamed of. It was a sanctuary, an oasis in the bustling suburban sprawl. The kind of place where memories were made. His fingers traced the family photos lining the hallway as he walked past them, his eyes lingering on the image of Lana holding their daughter, Maddie, with her arms wrapped around the little girl's shoulders. The warmth in that picture, the way they looked at each other, seemed so far removed from the cold feeling now lodged in his chest. His footsteps echoed in the silence of the house, each one more hollow than the last. The place was everything they had built together. The house, the career, the children, their shared life, each piece interlocking with the next. He had worked so hard to create a life for them, for her. And yet, in that one moment, the foundation of it all was beginning to crack. The kitchen, with its gleaming countertops and polished wood floors, was where Ethan often found solace. It was the heart of their home, where he spent late nights reading the paper over coffee, discussing the children's school projects with Lana, or planning their vacations. He and Lana had always had a rhythm, a natural balance. She worked hard as a corporate lawyer, her ambition as sharp as his, and he, with his steady job at the financial firm, had always been the rock in their relationship. But it hadn't always been this way. There were days in the beginning, back when their careers were just taking off, when he would stay up late and listen to her dream about the future. The way her eyes would light up when she spoke about their plans. But tonight, as Ethan paced the house, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of disillusionment. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, everything seemed so normal, so peaceful. And yet, beneath that calm, something had changed. Something he couldn't yet name. His gaze landed on the framed family portrait hanging above the fireplace. Lana, Maddie, and their son, Josh, smiling, happy, their arms wrapped around each other in a moment of pure joy. Ethan's heart twisted. They had raised their kids in this house, poured their lives into it. Their love had always seemed unwavering, an unspoken promise between them. But promises were fragile things. His mind went back to the receipt, still crumpled in his pocket. For a special night. The words burned in his mind. He had never imagined Lana would betray him, not in a million years. And yet, there it was. Tangible, undeniable proof of something far darker than he had ever thought possible. His eyes turned to the kitchen window, where the shadows of the evening stretched across the yard. It was a beautiful home, one that spoke of years of hard work, sacrifice, and love. It was supposed to be his haven, and yet, right now, it felt like a prison. He walked over to the counter where Lana's purse still sat untouched, a reminder of her absence tonight. He reached for it, his fingers trembling slightly as he opened it once more. He hadn't been able to look at it earlier. But now, with the weight of the receipt still in his pocket, he needed to see. He needed something to make sense of it all. The leather felt cool beneath his touch as he rummaged through her things. Pens, receipts, mints, and then, nestled at the bottom, something that made his stomach churn. A small, folded note. It was old, the edges frayed, and as he unfolded it, the words hit him like a punch to the gut. It was from Daniel. "I can't wait to see you tonight. Everything is set. Let's make it a night to remember." The words seemed to echo in his mind, a cruel reminder of the secret world Lana had been hiding from him. His pulse quickened as he read the note again. A night to remember. It wasn't just a business meeting. It wasn't just the casual exchanges she had led him to believe. There was more to this than he had ever imagined. His grip tightened around the note, crumpling it in his hand. His thoughts raced back to that dinner at Vincent's, the way Lana had looked at Daniel, the way she had leaned in just a little too close, laughed just a little too easily. The little things he had brushed aside, and now they hit him with the force of a freight train. Ethan's mind flashed to their children, Maddie and Josh. They had built everything for them, created a safe, stable life. He had always been the dependable one, the rock in their lives. But now, as the weight of the betrayal sank in, he couldn't help but wonder if his own stability was all a lie. His gaze flicked back to the family portrait above the fireplace. The smiles seemed hollow now, like ghosts trapped in the frame. His family, the life they had built together, was it all just a facade? Ethan swallowed hard, his throat tight with emotion. He had to know the truth. There was no turning back. His wife, the woman he had given his everything to, had lied to him, and now he would uncover every last secret. He could feel the rage bubbling beneath the surface, the betrayal settling in his bones like a poison. But there was something else too, something he hadn't expected, a chilling sense of clarity. This was his life, his family, his future. And whatever it took, he would make sure that the truth came out. Ethan couldn't sleep. The bed felt too big now. The sheets too cold. Sheets too cold. The faint hum of the air conditioner only added to the isolation that had seeped into the corners of the room. His mind raced, running through every conversation, every moment with Lana that suddenly felt tinged with doubt. She'd always been so careful, too careful. And now, the evidence of her betrayal was pressing against him from every angle. The receipt, the note, the whisper of the words, "for a special night," still echoed in his ears. What kind of night? What was the real meaning behind the champagne, the dress, the secretive texts? Every detail had been pieced together in the silence of his home, and the more he thought about it, the more suffocating it became. The house seemed to close in on him, the walls pressing tighter, as if mocking him with the life he thought he had. This home, his home, his home, once filled with the sound of laughter, now felt like a shell, hollow and cold. The kids were asleep, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Maddie and Josh, the two people who meant the world to him, were nestled in their rooms, untouched by the unraveling truth of their mother's deceit. He glanced at the empty side of the bed, Lana's absence more pronounced than ever. His phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with another message from her. "I'll be home late tonight. Big meeting with Daniel." There it was again, Daniel. That name, that lingering presence in their lives. Ethan hadn't thought much of him at first. A charming CEO, always polite, always professional. But the more Ethan replayed the dinner at Vincent's, the more the pieces began to fit together in a way that made his stomach churn. The way Lana had looked at him, the subtle touches, the glances, the shared moments. Ethan had been naive, blinded by his trust. But now, there was no mistaking it. She had crossed a line, and Ethan was left to pick up the pieces. The weight of the moment pushed him to the edge. He couldn't stay here. Not with his thoughts racing, not with this knot in his chest tightening with each passing minute. He grabbed his phone and dialed Tom, his best friend. Tom had always been the one to talk him down when he was on the verge of losing control, the one who kept him grounded. Tonight, Ethan needed that more than ever. The phone rang twice before Tom picked up. "Ethan? What's up, man?" "I don't know what to do, Tom." Ethan's voice cracked. the weight of his emotions almost too much to bear. "I found something. A receipt. A gift. She bought something extravagant. A bottle of champagne. A dress. For a special night." A bottle of champagne, a dress. Tom was silent for a moment, processing the information. "Wait, what are you saying, Lana?" Tom finally asked, his voice laced with confusion. Ethan took a deep breath. "Yeah, and the note. It's from Daniel." "Tom, a message about a night to remember." What the hell does that even mean? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. Ethan could feel Tom's shock, feel the disbelief that mirrored his own. "You're sure? I mean, it sounds like a business thing. But if you're feeling like there's more to it, there's more, Tom. I've seen it. I've felt it. Something's been off for a while. She's been distant, always on her phone, always leaving the room when I walk in. I'm telling you, it's not just a business thing. It's something more." The words tumbled out, a torrent of frustration, fear, and anger. Ethan couldn't hold it in anymore. The mask of the dependable, trusting husband had cracked, and behind it was a man on the verge of losing everything. "Man, I don't know what to say." Tom's voice softened. "But you need to confront her. You can't keep wondering what's going on. You've got to find out the truth, no matter how painful it is." Ethan closed his eyes, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had to confront her. There was no other choice. But the thought of facing Lana, of hearing the truth, whatever it was, felt like a knife to the gut. "I can't do this alone, Tom. I need to know if I'm just overreacting, or if there's really something going on. I don't even know who I'm married to anymore. I get it. I really do. But you have to face it, man, for your sake, for your family. You deserve the truth, and you need to know if she's been lying to you this whole time." Ethan swallowed hard. The truth. It was the only thing that mattered now. Whatever it was, however brutal, it would be the final reckoning for their marriage. The life they had built, their love, their family, all of it was at stake. "Thanks, Tom. I'll talk to her tonight. I need to." "Good luck, Ethan. You've got this. Whatever happens, you've got to stand tall." The call ended, and Ethan sat there in the silence that followed, his heart pounding in his chest. The night was drawing on, the darkened house surrounding him like a suffocating cocoon. He felt trapped, both physically and emotionally. He had been the rock, the steady presence in their lives. But now, the foundation he had built was crumbling, piece by piece, under the weight of betrayal. He grabbed the crumpled note from the counter and stared at it, his pulse racing. "Let's make it a night to remember." The words swirled in his mind, taunting him, daring him to believe in the worst. Ethan took one last look around the house, his home, the place where everything had started. And then, without another word, he walked to the door. It was time to face Lana. Time to hear the truth, whatever it was. And this time, there would be no turning back. Ethan sat in the dark of the living room, his heart thundering in his chest. The late-night silence felt almost oppressive as he stared at his phone, its screen glowing faintly in the dim light. Lana's message still lingered on the screen. "I'll be home late. Big meeting with the CEO." That familiar phrase, a phrase he'd heard too many times, had started to lose its comfort. This time, it cut through him with an icy edge, like a knife he hadn't seen coming. His eyes traced the words over and over, but they no longer made sense in his mind. They didn't match the weight of what he had found. He was holding on by a thread, trying to ignore the gnawing, visceral ache in his gut, but everything he had seen, so far, painted a clear picture he wasn't ready to confront. His mind raced back to the dinner at Vincent's, The way Daniel's charm had slipped past Ethan's defenses with such ease. The way Lana had laughed, her eyes shining with something deeper, something more than just admiration. But that had been so subtle, so easily brushed aside. It wasn't until tonight, when he discovered the receipt and the note, that the truth began to carve its path through the lies. Ethan glanced over at the family portrait hanging on the wall. He was staring at it like a stranger. Lana, smiling so brightly, holding their children, their life together so picture-perfect. But that image now felt like a distant memory, a lie wrapped in warmth. How long had she been hiding this from me? The question churned inside him, gnawing at him like an unhealed wound. The receipt, the note, the message. He needed to know the truth. He couldn't keep dancing around this any longer, and if he had to, he would face whatever came next head-on, even if it destroyed him. His phone buzzed again, pulling him out of his thoughts. Lana's name lit up the screen. Once more, but this time, it was accompanied by an address, a private hotel. His breath hitched in his throat. He had thought he knew his wife, his best friend, the woman he had shared his life with. But now, all he could feel was the overwhelming weight of betrayal. The sting of her absence felt too sharp. For a moment, he simply stared at the screen, his hands shaking. Then, something snapped. His gaze shifted to the front door, the cold night beckoning outside. Ethan stood up, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like an anchor. He couldn't wait any longer. His instincts had led him here, and now there was no turning back. The car felt suffocating as he drove through the dark streets, the road ahead illuminated by headlights that cut through the heavy shadows. He wasn't sure if it was fear or rage that fueled his drive, but either way, it pushed him forward. The hotel. The private rendezvous. The last string of trust he had left was unraveling with every mile. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white as he approached the hotel. His heart beat faster with every passing second. He parked a few blocks away, the weight of what he was about to do sinking into the pit of his stomach. This wasn't just about the evidence. It was about everything they had built together, everything he thought he knew about their love. With one final, hesitant breath, he exited the car, his feet dragging with the heaviness of the moment. As he moved towards the hotel, the darkness seemed to swallow him whole. Every step felt like a betrayal of its own, but there was no stopping now. Ethan's gaze lifted to the entrance of the hotel, his eyes locking onto a familiar car parked just outside. Lana's car. His chest tightened. His stomach lurched. His worst fears were becoming a reality. He stepped forward, his pulse racing in his ears. And there she was, Lana, walking hand in hand with Daniel, the CEO, the man who had been nothing but polite and professional in Ethan's eyes, the man who had shared laughs with him at company events pretending to be a friend. But now, with Lana in his grasp, it was clear. They had been playing him all along. Ethan stood there, frozen. His mind screamed, but his body refused to move. Every part of him wanted to turn and run, to pretend he hadn't seen them. But there was no escaping it now. His heart shattered as Lana turned and glanced at him. She froze, her eyes widening in shock. The color drained from her face as the truth unfolded before her eyes. In that moment, Ethan didn't know what hurt more, the look of betrayal in her eyes or the pit of hopelessness that had consumed him completely. Daniel smiled. It wasn't a smile of triumph. It wasn't a smile of victory. It was the smile of a man who had taken what didn't belong to him and had won, hands down. "She's been mine, Ethan." Daniel's voice was cool, almost dismissive. "And now, she's free to do what she wants." Ethan's hands clenched into fists at his sides. The rage, the devastation, the sorrow. It all welled up in him at once, but nothing could prepare him for the next moment. Lana opened her mouth, but no words came out. The guilt and shame were too heavy for her to bear. Ethan finally spoke, his voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. "I never thought you'd do this to me." And with that, the world he had known, the life he had fought for, crumbled around him. The betrayal wasn't just in her actions. It was in the lies they had told, the promises they had broken, and the future that would never be the same. He could feel the walls closing in on him as he turned and walked away, unable to face the woman who had once been his everything. As he drove away, the tears burned at the back of his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. The pain, the betrayal, the realization of what had happened, it all pressed down on him with the weight of an anchor. He couldn't change what had happened, but the truth had been uncovered, and there was no going back. Now, the only thing that remained was what he would do with it. The night at Vincent's. He couldn't escape the image of Lana and Daniel. Her laughter a little too bright, her smile a little too tender. The way she'd leaned in just slightly, the way her fingers had brushed against his arm as they spoke. It had all seemed so innocent at the time, so professional. But now, with the receipt clutched in his hand and the note from Daniel seared into his memory, it all painted a different story. A story of deceit. Ethan exhaled slowly, running a hand through his hair as the weight of the realization settled over him like a dark cloud. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, a bad night, or an overreaction. No, this was a betrayal, and a deep one at that. His mind was spinning as he paced in the living room, the soft thud of his footsteps against the hardwood floor, the only sound breaking the eerie silence. He knew he had to confront her. The truth couldn't be ignored any longer. The thought of facing Lana, of hearing the words he feared most, almost paralyzed him with dread. He had always trusted her, believed in the foundation of their marriage. But trust, as it turned out, had been a fragile illusion. The life they had built, the home, the children, the dreams, felt like it was slipping through his fingers. He couldn't let this moment pass. He couldn't ignore the truth. His phone buzzed again. Lana. The message was brief, a hollow echo of the one that had come earlier. "I'll be home late. Big meeting with Daniel." A pang of anger surged through him, hot and bitter. How many times had he heard this excuse? How many nights had she stayed late, claiming to work on something with him? Something that, in hindsight, felt like a lie, wrapped in a glossy, professional facade. Ethan swallowed hard, staring at the screen. He had to do it. He couldn't wait for her to come home and weave her web of half-truths. He needed to confront her now. The doorbell rang, pulling him out of his spiraling thoughts. His heart skipped a beat as he approached the door, dread mixing with a flicker of hope. Maybe she had returned early. Maybe he had misunderstood. But deep down, he knew the truth. He opened the door to find Lana standing there, her expression neutral, but her eyes betraying something deeper, an unease, a shift. She'd always been good at hiding her emotions, but tonight, something was different. Her hair was slightly tousled, her professional appearance intact, but there was a tension in her posture that sent a chill down his spine. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft, almost too soft. "I didn't expect you to be up." "Yeah," he said, his voice tight. "I couldn't sleep." Lana took a step forward, but Ethan didn't move. The silence between them felt suffocating, thick with unspoken words. "I found something," Ethan said, his voice shaking but steady. His voice shaking but steady. "Something you've been hiding." Lana froze. Her eyes flickered, and in that brief moment, Ethan saw the flicker of guilt, then the deflection. Her usual confidence, the calm exterior she always wore, cracked just enough for him to see the truth beneath. She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. "What do you mean?" she finally asked, her voice thin, defensive. Ethan didn't wait for an invitation to lay it all out. He stepped closer, the receipt still clutched in his hand. "I know about Daniel," he said, his voice cold, controlled, but his insides were unraveling. The meeting with him, the gifts, the nights you've been spending with him. "I know it all, Lana." Her eyes widened, her lips parted, but no words escaped her. The color drained from her face. For a moment, she was speechless. "Ethan, I can explain," she stammered, her voice bleeding, but there was no mistaking the panic behind it. "It's not what you think." Ethan's anger flared. The betrayal, the lies, it all welled up inside him like a tidal wave. "Not what I think," he repeated bitterly. "What am I supposed to think, Lana? I've been sitting here in our home while you've been playing me for a fool, buying gifts, sneaking around, meeting him late at night, for business. You think I'm that stupid?" Lana's eyes darted away, a flash of guilt flickering across her face before she quickly masked it with her usual calm. "Ethan, it's not like that," she said, her voice growing steadier, defensive. "It was just a business thing. You don't understand." Ethan felt a wave of disgust wash over him. "A business thing? A gift? A special night? You really think I'll buy that? You've been lying to me, Lana, and not just tonight. For months. I can feel it. I've been waiting for you to admit it, and you keep pushing me away." Her eyes softened, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." The words hit Ethan like a slap in the face. He could hear the hollow regret in her voice. But it didn't change the fact that she had crossed a line that was too far for him to ever ignore again. "You never meant for it to go this far?" he repeated, his voice shaking now. "You think I care about your excuses? What am I supposed to do with that, Lana? I trusted you." Her eyes welled up, the guilt evident now, but Ethan couldn't let her off the hook so easily. Not anymore. He stepped back, a cold anger simmering beneath the surface. "I want the truth, Lana. All of it. No more lies." She shook her head, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry. I was weak and confused. I never thought I'd hurt you this way. But it's over. It has to be. It's just over." Ethan took a step back, his mind racing. The world around him felt distant, like he was watching it all unfold from a faraway place. He couldn't believe it. His wife, the woman he had loved for so long, had betrayed him in ways that were unimaginable. He could hear her apology, her regret, but it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. "You don't get to decide when it's over," he said, his voice low and seething with pain. "I'm done being lied to. I'm done pretending everything's okay." With that, he turned away, walking out of the house, leaving Lana standing there, her silent sobs echoing in the emptiness of their home. The door slammed behind him with finality, and Ethan's heart shattered. There was no coming back from this. Not after everything. He knew what he had to do now. He couldn't let this slide. Ethan sat in his car, the engine idling as he stared blankly at the road ahead. The confrontation with Lana had left him numb, the pain of her betrayal still raw and throbbing. He couldn't go back to that house. Not now. Not ever. The life he had known was shattered, and the only thing left was the cold, hard truth of what had happened. He took a deep breath, his mind racing with a mix of anger, sorrow, and a newfound determination. He couldn't let this go. He couldn't let Daniel and Lana get away with what they had done. The thought of them continuing their lives as if nothing had happened was unbearable. He needed to act, to take control, to make them pay. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, his knuckles turning white. He knew he had to be methodical, calculated. Revenge wasn't something to be rushed into. It required planning, precision, and a clear head. He needed to gather intel, to understand Daniel's background, his weaknesses, and any potential vulnerabilities. His first step was to reach out to Rachel, an old friend from law school who had made a name for herself in corporate scandals. She was savvy, well-connected, and knew how to dig deep into the murky waters of corporate corruption. Ethan dialed her number, his heart pounding in his chest. "Ethan," Rachel's voice was warm but cautious. "It's been a while. What's going on? What's going on?" "Rachel, I need your help," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "It's about Lana and her boss, Daniel. I found out they've been involved, and I need to know everything about him. His background, his business practices, anything that could be used against him." There was a pause on the other end, and Ethan could almost hear Rachel's mind working. "Ethan, are you sure about this? This sounds serious." "I'm sure," Ethan replied, his voice firm. "I can't let this go. I need to know everything." Rachel sighed softly. "All right, Ethan, I'll help you, but you need to be prepared for what we might find. This could get ugly." "I'm prepared," Ethan said, his resolve unwavering. "I need to know the truth, no matter how ugly it is." Over the next few days, Ethan and Rachel worked tirelessly, digging into Daniel's company and his personal life. They uncovered illicit business practices, shady deals, and a web of corruption that ran deeper than Ethan had imagined. Daniel's charm and professionalism were just a facade, hiding a ruthless and manipulative man who would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. Ethan's vengeance would be methodical, hitting both Lana and Daniel where it hurt the most. He knew how to play this game. He had been in the corporate world long enough to understand the rules, the loopholes, and the weaknesses. He would use every tool at his disposal to bring them down. As he sat in his car, the city lights reflecting off the windshield, Ethan felt a cold sense of clarity. He had a plan, a direction, and a purpose. He would make them pay for what they had done, for the pain they had caused, for the life they had shattered. He started the engine, the car rumbling to life. The road ahead was long and treacherous, but Ethan was ready. He would take the first step of his revenge, setting the trap that would ensnare both Lana and Daniel. And he would do it with the cold, calculated precision of a man who had nothing left to lose. The city lights blurred as he drove, the weight of his mission settling over him like a cloak. He would not rest until justice was served, until the truth was exposed, and until those who had wronged him paid the price. The hunt had begun, and Ethan was ready to see it through to the bitter end. Ethan's plan unfolded with the precision of a well-oiled machine. He had spent countless nights poring over the details, ensuring that every move was calculated and every contingency accounted for. The pain of Lana's betrayal had morphed into a cold, unyielding determination. He would not let her and Daniel get away with what they had done. The first step was to anonymously tip off the authorities about Daniel's illegal activities. Ethan had gathered enough evidence to ensure that the investigation would be thorough and damning. He sent the information through encrypted channels, ensuring that his identity remained hidden. The authorities moved swiftly, raiding Daniel's offices and seizing documents that would incriminate him beyond any reasonable doubt. The news of the investigation spread like wildfire through the corporate world. Daniel's once immaculate reputation began to crumble under the weight of the allegations. His company's stock plummeted, and his business partners started to distance themselves, fearing the fallout. Ethan watched from the shadows, a grim satisfaction settling over him as he saw the first cracks in Daniel's empire. But Ethan's revenge wasn't just about bringing down Daniel's career. He wanted Lana to feel the full weight of her actions, to understand the consequences of her betrayal. He knew that exposing her affair publicly would be the ultimate humiliation, a blow from which she would never recover. The opportunity presented itself at a charity gala, an event where Lana was scheduled to appear with Daniel. It was the perfect setting for Ethan's final act of vengeance. He discreetly arranged for the affair to be exposed, ensuring that the media would be present to capture every moment. The night of the gala arrived, and Ethan stood in the shadows, watching as the elite of the city filed into the grand ballroom. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfumes and the murmur of polite conversation. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, but his resolve was unwavering. He knew what he had to do. As Lana and Daniel made their entrance, the room fell silent. All eyes turned to the couple, their smiles forced and their hands clasped tightly together. Ethan could see the tension in Lana's posture, the slight tremble in her hands. She knew something was wrong, but she couldn't pinpoint what it was. Ethan stepped forward, his presence commanding the attention of the room. The cameras flashed as he approached Lana and Daniel, his eyes locked on his wife. The crowd watched in stunned silence as Ethan confronted Lana, his voice steady and clear. "Lana, I think it's time the world knew the truth about you and Daniel," Ethan said, his voice echoing through the ballroom. "About the affair? The lies? The betrayal?" Lana's face paled, her eyes wide with shock and fear. Daniel's grip on her hand tightened, but he said nothing, his usual charm replaced by a cold, calculating stare. Ethan continued, his voice unwavering. "I found the receipts, the notes, the evidence of your secret meetings. I know everything, Lana. And now, so does everyone else." The room erupted in a flurry of whispers and gasps. The cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing every moment of Lana's humiliation. She stood frozen, unable to speak, her eyes filled with tears. Daniel finally spoke, his voice cold and dismissive. "This is a private matter, Ethan. You have no right to air our dirty laundry in public." Ethan turned to Daniel, his eyes blazing with anger. "You have no right to speak to me about rights, Daniel. You took everything from me. My wife, my trust, my life. And now, you will pay the price." The crowd's reactions were a mix of shock and sympathy. Some looked at Lana with pity, others with disgust. Ethan could feel the weight of their stares, but he didn't falter. He had come this far, and he would see it through to the end. Lana finally found her voice, her words barely above a whisper. "Ethan, please, I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." Ethan's heart ached, but he steeled himself against the pain. "It's too late for apologies, Lana. The damage is done. And now, the world knows the truth." With that, Ethan turned and walked away, leaving Lana and Daniel to face the consequences of their actions. The room erupted in a flurry of activity as the media descended on the couple, their questions relentless and unforgiving. Ethan stepped out into the cool night air, his heart heavy but his mind clear. He had done what he set out to do. He had exposed the truth, brought Daniel's career to the brink of ruin, and ensured that Lana's betrayal was laid bare for all to see. As he drove away from the gala, the city lights blurring in his rearview mirror, Ethan felt a sense of closure. The pain of Lana's betrayal would never fully disappear, but he had taken control of his life, avenged the wrongs done to him, and ensured that justice was served. The road ahead was uncertain, but Ethan was ready to face whatever came next. He had weathered the storm, and now he would rebuild his life, piece by piece, with the knowledge that he had stood tall and fought for what was right. The future was his to shape, and he would do so with the strength and resilience of a man who had faced his darkest hour and emerged victorious. Ethan sat alone in his office, the dim light casting long shadows across the room. The adrenaline from the gala had worn off, leaving him with a hollow feeling in his chest. The revenge he had so meticulously planned was unfolding, but the satisfaction he had anticipated was nowhere to be found. Instead, a gnawing unease had settled in, a sense that things were spiraling out of control. His phone buzzed on the desk, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Tom, his best friend, the one person who had always been there for him. Ethan hesitated before answering, knowing that Tom would have seen the news by now. "Ethan, what the hell is going on?" Tom's voice was a mix of concern and anger. "I just saw the news. Lana and Daniel, the gala. What were you thinking?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I had to do it, Tom. I had to expose the truth." "Expose the truth? Ethan, this is a mess. Lana's humiliation is all over the news. And your kids? Have you thought about how this is affecting them?" Ethan's heart sank. He hadn't considered the full impact on Maddie and Josh. In his quest for revenge, he had been so focused on bringing down Lana and Daniel that he had overlooked the collateral damage. I didn't think it would get this big," Ethan admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I just wanted them to face the consequences of their actions." Tom's voice softened slightly. "I get it, Ethan. I do. But you need to think about the bigger picture. Your kids are going to be hurt by this. And what about you? How are you handling all of this?" Ethan looked around his office, the once familiar space now feeling foreign and cold. I don't know, Tom. I thought I was doing the right thing. But now, I'm not so sure." Tom sighed. "Ethan, I've known you for a long time. You're a good man, but this isn't you. Revenge isn't the answer. You need to think about the moral consequences of your actions. You need to think about your family." Ethan's mind flashed to Maddie and Josh, their innocent faces filled with confusion and pain. He had been so consumed by his own anger and betrayal that he had forgotten the most important people in his life. "You're right, Tom," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to fix this. I need to make things right." Tom's voice was firm, but gentle. "You can start by talking to your kids. Explain what's going on. Be honest with them. They deserve to know the truth, but they also need to know that you're there for them." Ethan nodded, even though Tom couldn't see him. "I will. I'll talk to them. I'll make things right." The call ended, and Ethan sat in silence, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He had been so focused on his revenge that he had lost sight of what truly mattered. His family, his children, his future, they were all at stake. And he had let his anger cloud his judgment. He stood up, his resolve strengthening. He needed to face the consequences of his actions, to make amends with his children, and to find a way to move forward. Revenge had seemed like the answer, but now he saw the true cost of his actions. The pain he had caused, the lives he had disrupted. It was all too much. Ethan walked out of his office, the cool night air hitting him like a slap in the face. He needed to go home, to face his children, to explain what had happened. He needed to be the father they deserved, the rock they could lean on in this storm. As he drove home, the city lights blurring in his rearview mirror, Ethan felt a mix of determination and regret. He had let his anger and betrayal consume him, but now he saw the path forward. He would make things right, no matter what it took. The house was quiet as he pulled into the driveway, the familiar sight now tinged with a sense of unease. He took a deep breath and stepped inside, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the empty hallway. Maddie and Josh were in the living room, their eyes red from crying. They looked up as he entered, their expressions a mix of confusion and pain. Ethan's heart ached as he saw the hurt in their eyes, the betrayal they felt from their own mother. "Dad, what's going on?" Maddie asked, her voice trembling. "Why is Mom all over the news? Why is everyone saying those things about her?" Ethan sat down next to them, his voice steady but gentle. "I need to talk to you both about what's been happening. It's a lot to take in, and I want you to know the truth." He explained everything, from the moment he found the receipt to the confrontation at the gala. He spoke honestly without sugarcoating the truth, but also with a deep sense of regret. He told them about the pain of betrayal, the anger that had consumed him, and the realization that his actions had hurt them more than anyone else. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "I let my anger get the best of me. I forgot what truly mattered. I forgot about you both. And I'm so sorry." Josh looked up at him, his eyes filled with tears. "It's okay, Dad. We understand. It's a lot to take in." Maddie nodded, her voice soft. "We love you, Dad, and we know you're trying to do what's best for us. We just want everything to be okay again." Ethan pulled them both into a tight hug, feeling the weight of their trust and love. He had made mistakes, but he was determined to make things right. He would be the father they needed, the rock they could lean on. As they sat there, the three of them together, Ethan felt a sense of clarity. The revenge he had sought was not worth the pain it had caused. The destruction of Lana and Daniel was not worth the price his family had paid. He would move forward, rebuild his life, and ensure that his children knew they were loved and supported no matter what. The road ahead was uncertain, but Ethan was ready to face whatever came next. He had weathered the storm, and now he would rebuild his life, piece by piece, with the knowledge that he had the strength and resilience to overcome anything. The future was his to shape, and he would do so with his family by his side, stronger and more united than ever before. Ethan sat in his office, the room bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. The adrenaline from the gala had long since faded, leaving behind a hollow emptiness. The revenge he had so meticulously planned had unfolded with devastating precision, but the satisfaction he had anticipated was nowhere to be found. Instead, a cold, gnawing regret had settled in, a sense that he had gone too far. The news of Daniel's arrest had spread like wildfire. The authorities had moved swiftly, raiding his offices and seizing documents that incriminated him beyond any reasonable doubt. Daniel's once immaculate reputation was in tatters, his company collapsing under the weight of the scandal. Lana, too, had faced the consequences of her actions. She had been fired from her high-profile job, her social standing crumbling as she was left alone, penniless, and ostracized. Ethan had watched from the shadows as the world he had known crumbled. He had thought that seeing Daniel and Lana face the consequences of their actions would bring him closure. But it had only left him feeling empty. The anger that had fueled his revenge had dissolved into a cold, aching void. He looked around his office, the once familiar space now feeling foreign and cold. The framed photos of his family, once a source of comfort, now felt like distant memories. He had been so consumed by his quest for revenge that he had lost sight of what truly mattered. His family, his children, his future, they were all at stake. and he had let his anger cloud his judgment. Ethan's phone buzzed on the desk, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Tom, his best friend, the one person who had always been there for him. Ethan hesitated before answering, knowing that Tom would have seen the news by now. "Ethan, what the hell is going on?" Tom's voice was a mix of concern and anger. "I just saw the news. Daniel's been arrested. Lana's been fired. And she's all over the news. What were you thinking?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I had to do it, Tom. I had to expose the truth." "Expose the truth?" "Ethan, this is a mess. Lana's humiliation is all over the news. And your kids, have you thought about how this is affecting them?" Ethan's heart sank. He hadn't considered the full impact on Maddie and Josh. In his quest for revenge, he had been so focused on bringing down Lana and Daniel that he had overlooked the collateral damage. I didn't think it would get this big," Ethan admitted, his voice heavy with regret. "I just wanted them to face the consequences of their actions." Tom's voice softened slightly. "I get it, Ethan. I do, Ethan. I do. But you need to think about the bigger picture. Your kids are going to be hurt by this. And what about you? How are you handling all of this?" Ethan looked around his office, the once familiar space now feeling foreign and cold. "I don't know, Tom. I don't know, Tom. I thought I was doing the right thing, but now I'm not so sure." Tom sighed. "Ethan, I've known you for a long time. You're a good man, but this isn't you. Revenge isn't the answer. You need to think about the moral consequences of your actions. You need to think about your family." Ethan's mind flashed to Maddie and Josh, their innocent faces filled with confusion and pain. He had been so consumed by his own anger and betrayal that he had forgotten the most important people in his life. "You're right, Tom," Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to fix this. I need to make things right." Tom's voice was firm but gentle. "You can start by talking to your kids. Explain what's going on. Be honest with them. They deserve to know the truth, but they also need to know that you're there for them." Ethan nodded, even though Tom couldn't see him. "I will. I'll talk to them. I'll make things right." The call ended, and Ethan sat in silence, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He had been so focused on his revenge that he had lost sight of what truly mattered. His family, his children, his future, they were all at stake, and he had let his anger cloud his judgment. He stood up, his resolve strengthening. He needed to face the consequences of his actions, to make amends with his children, and to find a way to move forward. Revenge had seemed like the answer, but now he saw the true cost of his actions, the pain he had caused, the lives he had disrupted. It was all too much. Ethan walked out of his office, the cool night air hitting him like a slap in the face. He needed to go home, to face his children, to explain what had happened. He needed to be the father they deserved, the rock they could lean on in this storm. As he drove home, the city lights blurring in his rearview mirror, Ethan felt a mix of determination and regret. He had let his anger and betrayal consume him, but now he saw the path forward. He would make things right, no matter what it took. The house was quiet as he pulled into the driveway, the familiar sight now tinged with a sense of unease. He took a deep breath and stepped inside, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the empty hallway. Maddie and Josh were in the living room, their eyes red from crying. They looked up as he entered, their expressions a mix of confusion and pain. Ethan's heart ached as he saw the hurt in their eyes, the betrayal they felt from their own mother. "Dad, what's going on?" Maddie asked, her voice trembling. Why is Mom all over the news? Why is everyone saying those things about her? Ethan sat down next to them, his voice steady but gentle. I need to talk to you both about what's been happening. It's a lot to take in, and I want you to know the truth. He explained everything, from the moment he found the receipt to the confrontation at the gala. He spoke honestly, without sugarcoating the truth, but also with a deep sense of regret. He told them about the pain of betrayal, the anger that had consumed him, and the realization that his actions had hurt them more than anyone else. I'm sorry, Ethan said, his voice breaking. I let my anger get the best of me. I forgot what truly mattered. I forgot about you both. And I'm so sorry. Josh looked up at him, his eyes filled with tears. It's okay, Dad. We understand. It's a lot to take in. Maddie nodded, her voice soft. We love you, Dad. And we know you're trying to do what's best for us. We just want everything to be okay again. Ethan pulled them both into a tight hug, feeling the weight of their trust and love. He had made mistakes, but he was determined to make things right. He had made mistakes, but he was determined to make things right. He would be the father they needed, the rock they could lean on. As they sat there, the three of them together, Ethan felt a sense of clarity. The revenge he had sought was not worth the pain it had caused. The destruction of Lana and Daniel was not worth the price his family had paid. He would move forward, rebuild his life, and ensure that his children knew they were loved and supported, no matter what. The road ahead was uncertain, but Ethan was ready to face whatever came next. He had weathered the storm, and now he would rebuild his life, piece by piece, with the knowledge that he had the strength and resilience to overcome anything. The future was his to shape, and he would do so with his family by his side, stronger and more united than ever before. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan found himself standing at the threshold of a new beginning. The media frenzy had died down, but the scars of his actions remained. He had visited Lana, finding her in a small, run-down apartment, her once vibrant spirit now broken and defeated. Seeing her like that had been a stark reminder of the consequences of his revenge. Lana, Ethan said softly, standing in the doorway of her modest apartment. I didn't come here to gloat or to rub it in. I came because I need to understand something. Lana looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of regret and resignation. What do you need to understand, Ethan? Ethan took a deep breath. I need to understand why. Why you did what you did. Why you betrayed me, betrayed us. Lana sighed, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know, Ethan. I was weak. I was lonely. I was looking for something that I thought I couldn't find with you. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. Ethan nodded, feeling a pang of sympathy despite everything. I know, and I'm sorry too. I let my anger get the best of me. I forgot what truly mattered. I forgot about our family. Lana looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm so sorry for everything. Ethan reached out, gently taking her hand. I forgive you, Lana. I forgive you because I need to move forward. I need to rebuild my life, and I can't do that if I'm still holding on to this anger and resentment. Lana nodded, her voice breaking. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for forgiving me. Ethan left Lana's apartment feeling a sense of closure. He had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for his own. He needed to move forward, to rebuild his life, and to ensure that his children knew they were loved and supported, no matter what. As he drove home, the city lights blurring in his rearview mirror, Ethan felt a mix of determination and hope. The future was uncertain, but he was ready to face whatever came next. He had weathered the storm, and now he would rebuild his life piece by piece, with the knowledge that he had the strength and resilience to overcome anything. The future was his to shape, and he would do so with his family by his side, stronger and more united than ever before. Ethan stood at the window of his home office, gazing out at the sprawling backyard where Maddie and Josh were playing. The laughter of his children was a soothing balm to his weary soul. The past few months had been a tumultuous journey, filled with pain, betrayal, and the harsh consequences of his actions. But now, as he watched his children, he felt a sense of peace beginning to settle over him. The media frenzy surrounding Lana and Daniel had finally died down, but the scars of his revenge remained etched in his heart. He had visited Lana in her small, rundown apartment, seeing her broken and defeated. That visit had been a stark reminder of the consequences of his actions. He had forgiven her, not for her sake, but for his own. Holding on to anger and resentment would only poison his future, and he needed to move forward. Ethan took a deep breath, turning away from the window to face the framed photos on his desk. Pictures of happier times, family vacations, birthday celebrations, and simple moments captured in time. He picked up a photo of Lana, Maddie, Josh, and himself, taken during a summer vacation a few years back. The smiles on their faces were genuine, a testament to the love and unity they once shared. He set the photo down gently, a mix of emotions swirling within him. The pain of Lana's betrayal was still raw, but he had come to understand that holding on to that pain would only hinder his healing. He needed to focus on the present, on rebuilding his life, and ensuring that his children had the stability and love they deserve. Ethan walked out of his office and made his way to the kitchen, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. He poured himself a cup and sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where this journey had begun. The hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock were familiar sounds, but they no longer felt suffocating. Instead, they were a comforting reminder of the life he was rebuilding. His phone buzzed on the table, and he glanced at the screen. It was a message from Rachel, his old friend from law school who had helped him uncover the truth about Daniel. She had been a steadfast support throughout his ordeal, offering not just her legal expertise, but also her friendship. Rachel, hey Ethan, just checking in. How are you holding up? Ethan smiled softly, appreciating her concern. Ethan, hey Rachel, I'm doing okay. Taking it one day at a time. The kids are adjusting, and that's what matters most. Rachel, that's good to hear. You're stronger than you think, Ethan. Remember that. Ethan set his phone down, her words echoing in his mind. He was stronger than he thought, and he was determined to prove it, not just to himself, but to his children. He took a sip of his coffee, the warm liquid grounding him. The past few months had been a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, regret, and now, a growing sense of acceptance. He had learned the hard way about the cost of betrayal and the painful path of revenge. But he had also discovered the strength within himself to rebuild and move forward. Ethan looked out the kitchen window, watching as Maddie and Josh played in the backyard. Their laughter was a reminder of the innocence and joy that still existed in his life. He had made mistakes, but he was determined to make things right. He would be the father they needed, the rock they could lean on. As he finished his coffee, Ethan made a decision. He would take some time away from his career, focusing on healing and being present for his children. He would prioritize their well-being, ensuring that they had the stability and love they needed to thrive. Over the next few weeks, Ethan threw himself into being a full-time dad. He took Maddie and Josh on adventures, exploring local parks, museums, and even taking a spontaneous road trip. They laughed, played, and created new memories together. Ethan found solace in these moments, feeling a sense of purpose and fulfillment he hadn't experienced in a long time. One evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Ethan looked at his children with a quiet resolution. He had found peace, and though he had lost his wife, he had gained back his dignity and sense of self. "Dad, can we go to the beach tomorrow?" Maddie asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Of course, sweetheart. We can pack a picnic and spend the whole day there." Josh grinned, his earlier sadness replaced by a growing happiness. "Can we build a sandcastle?" Ethan ruffled Josh's hair playfully. "Absolutely. Absolutely. The biggest sandcastle ever." As they finished dinner and cleaned up together, Ethan felt a sense of contentment. The road ahead was uncertain, but he was ready to face whatever came next. He had weathered the storm, and now he would rebuild his life, piece by piece, with the knowledge that he had the strength and resilience to overcome anything. That night, as Ethan tucked his children into bed, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had been given a second chance to be the father they deserved, and he was determined to make the most of it. "Good night, Dad," Maddie whispered, her eyes already heavy with sleep. "Good night, sweetheart," Ethan replied softly, kissing her forehead. He moved to Josh's bed, tucking him in gently. "Good night, buddy." Josh smiled sleepily. "Good night, Dad. I love you." Ethan's heart swelled with love. "I love you too, Josh." "More than you know." As he left their room, Ethan felt a quiet resolution settling over him. He had found peace, and though the scars of his past remained, he was ready to embrace the future with open arms. He would rebuild his life, stronger and more united than ever before, with his family by his side. In the quiet of his home, Ethan sat down at the kitchen table. The hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock, a comforting reminder of the life he was rebuilding. He took a deep breath, feeling a sense of closure. The pain of betrayal, the anger of revenge, and the lessons learned had all led him to this moment. He was ready to move forward, to embrace the future, with the strength and resilience he had discovered within himself. As he looked around his home, the photos of his family, the laughter of his children, and the warmth of the memories they were creating together, Ethan knew that he had found his way back. He had reclaimed his dignity and his sense of self, and he was ready to face whatever the future held with his family by his side.